Okay, so when I think about how to teach art or lettering or creativity as a way to make money, I think about two different things when it comes to classes and online courses and whatever. I think about how to get students and how to prepare to teach whatever subject you're teaching. So, first, let's talk about students. There are lots of ways to draw students to your class. If you have an online class, then obviously online places are probably the way to go. So you can use social media to advertise your class. But you can also use social media as a way to kind of practice teaching and show people your good ideas about teaching in an easily digestible format. So I do a lot of videos on Instagram, and Instagram does not pay you. As opposed to YouTube. Instagram doesn't have a method for paying people who do viral videos, but I have found that I can use Instagram or I can use other places like Pinterest as a way to make videos and see how well they do, see how people like them. And that's honestly the way that how I first decided to teach my night sky class, is because of Instagram, because a lot of people really liked that format. So social media is a good way to practice, and then obviously it's also a good way to, once you've shown people that you are good at whatever you're trying to teach them, then you can you know advertise your classes and try to draw in students that way. So social media is not just Instagram; it can be Facebook, it can be Pinterest, it can be Twitter, anything like that. Um, you can also go to local venues and see if they will. This is now I'm gearing toward more workshops, but you can also go to local venues. You heard my son sneeze just now. Sorry about that. You can go to local venues and see if they'd be willing to post your advertisements for classes. If you are having a class at that local venue, they should be advertising it anyway. But if not, you can go to local craft stores and just ask the proprietor or whoever the manager or the worker is if they have like an event board or a things to do in this city board or anything like that. Eventbrite is also a good way to have people find your workshops. All of my workshops I do the payment through Eventbrite, and I do that partially because I know a lot of people. I've had a lot of students who, when I ask them how they found out about my class, they have gone to Eventbrite and looked for a watercolor class. And so knowing that people often use Eventbrite as like a search engine is really helpful for me in terms of continuing to use Eventbrite, right? So that is one thing to think about. It's also important to just think about where people go, like along those lines, where people go to find out what they're going to do or to find out about really cool events and really cool workshops. Because I guarantee you, no matter where you are, there's an audience of people who really want to learn what you have to teach them. There's gonna be an audience for that. You just have to figure out where that audience is. And so a lot of cities have local like to-do newsletters. A lot of cities have Facebook groups or Facebook events that curate things to do. So that's something to do. That's something to think about. Facebook and Instagram also do targeted ads. So if you want to spend money on advertising, then you can also do that. They have an option to target geographically, so that can be helpful. And then, like with client work, word of mouth and referrals is one of the best ways to get people to come to your class. What do you do when you go to a class or watch something or see something that you loved? You go and tell your friends about it, right? And not necessarily to get them to do it, but just to like share the fact that you had such a good time doing this thing. So creating a good experience for your students and encouraging them to tell their friends about their good experience is a great way to get even more students. So those are some things to think about. And again, if you are interested in learning how to teach and my methods for teaching classes, I am currently in the process of building a course on this, and pre-sale for that course is going to launch probably in November, maybe a little bit later, but I'm probably thinking in November is when I'm going to do that, so keep an eye out for that. Next, it's important to think about how to prepare to teach. So this is going to be quick because I'm going to be more in depth later, but basically you want to think about the materials that you want to use and how that plays into your price. So are you going to use if you're doing a watercolor course like I do for an in-person class, are you going to do professional materials, or are you going to do the cheaper materials to save costs for you? Are you going to let students keep the materials, or are you just going to have a classroom set? Are you going to have the students like bring in their own materials because you just don't have the bandwidth to purchase all of that stuff? All of that plays into price and is something that you need to think about what works best for you and what works best for your audience. I will tell you that personally, I used to purchase the materials and then have the students basically take them all home and had a higher ticket price. But after I tried doing that for like 6 months, and my ticket sales weren't so great. So after talking with the venues that I worked with, I now have a classroom set of professional materials that I use, and then I give like a sample set for students to take home, just so it saves cost for me so that I can lower the cost of ticket sales. Okay, so that's materials. And in terms of teaching, it's also important to think about how you're going to teach. So are you going to have visual aids? Are you just going to talk? Is there going to be like a projector? Are you going to create a workbook? These are all ideas that you can think about for when you create your own curriculum in your own class. Personally, the very first class that I taught, the very first workshop that I taught, I didn't have like any visual aids except for I brought some of my own paintings that I had done in the past and just like passed them around. And while that was helpful, I think, to some people it wasn't as helpful for others. And so I learned from that experience, and I created a workbook for that classroom. And then from that workbook, I actually created my wilderness ebook. So and that has proven to be very helpful, and people really appreciate that. Okay, so another thing to think about is that people love to have, in workshops and classes especially, people love to have some kind of tangible project that they can finish, that they can start and finish in the class, that they feel like they've accomplished something. And if you'll notice, all of my Skillshare classes are project-based, including this one. I have a final project where I have a free template worksheet on my website that you can download and use to help you figure out where you want to take your business. So I would definitely consider going project-based. And for as far as like teaching it, I think one of the biggest questions I get is how do you even do it? How do you even teach? And one thing that I'm going to say is nobody feels like they are prepared to teach a class. Nobody. So I know that I was a complete wreck the first time that I made my Skillshare class. I was a complete wreck before my first workshop. And sometimes they don't go so well because you're a complete wreck and you just have no idea what to do. And sometimes you fumble, but that's okay because every class is a learning experience. And the more confidence you have in yourself, the better things are going to be. So if you have trouble speaking, but you still really want to teach an in-person class, then practice what you're going to say, create an outline, and that is going to really help you be comfortable when you have to learn to explain things on the fly. But I just want to say that it's hard, and everybody feels like they aren't a good teacher, and everybody feels like they're not explaining things the right way, but you're probably doing better than you think you are. So on that note, here's my list of knowing whether or not teaching is right for you. So first, let's talk about online classes. Teaching is right for you if, for online classes, you really enjoy explaining topics and you have an eye for breaking down complex topics and ideas into simple steps. That's really key to teaching. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you can teach it, right? The key to teaching is breaking it down. If you like the idea of reaching a lot of people with just one course or resource, then online classes in particular are a really good option for you. I love Skillshare because I have taught thousands and thousands of students that I otherwise wouldn't have had access to through the magical powers of the internet. I'm also going to say, and this is on both lists, teaching is right for you if you have thick skin, because you are going to get students who just like don't respond to you or give you bad reviews or hate what you teach, no matter what. You're always going to get at least one bad review. But I am going to say that I can pretty much guarantee if you are passionate about a topic and you really put in the time to create a course that will be valuable for people, like you put in the time to break it down and make sure it's you're explaining yourself clearly, then you're going to get way more positive comments. So anyway, and then the last thing on this list of online versus in-person workshops is online is probably for you if you prefer to control exactly what you're teaching, meaning you can edit your content and you can just be in control of what you say and have the flexibility to re-record whatever it is you're trying to say. So that's one thing to think about if you are considering teaching online classes. So on the flip side, if you want to teach in-person workshops, which by the way, you can teach both. I teach both. They just have different skill sets. So I would teach in-person workshops if you enjoy working with learners face-to-face. So if you enjoy looking at people learn and helping people in person, they're for you if you can be patient with students who don't know what they don't know. So what I mean by that is my first workshop, I remember I taught 10 people and I was explaining things, and because I had painted 1,000 trees and I already knew exactly what I meant by the methods I was teaching, it was hard for me to, when I was explaining, I could see in some of the students' faces that they weren't quite understanding, but they didn't know what they didn't understand, if that makes sense. So it takes kind of a skill set that you get better and better at as you're teaching, to watch a student try to paint something or try to do something and figure out what piece they're missing and try to explain it in a way that will help them understand it even better. So that's just like a quick explanation of that certain skill set that, again, I didn't have when I first started, but I got better at as I continued. So that's if you're patient with students who don't know what they don't know, if you can tackle on-the-spot problem solving, which we kind of already talked about, have thick skin, we already talked about. Obviously, in-person means talking in front of real people, and you don't have to be a public speaker to be good at running a workshop. I'm going to say that again. You can practice and be better at it. But if you hate it, then I wouldn't recommend it. So also, you would need to juggle multiple students' needs at one time, because part of the draw of an in-person workshop is that you get one-on-one time with the instructor, right? So as the instructor, then you need to be able to jump from student to student and really get good at honing in on what that specific student needs and how you can help them get their money's worth. I would also say you would need to have some level of enjoying working with venues and or planning your own events, and that you can improvise well and be flexible. So that is my list of how you might know if teaching is right for you, whether that's online classes or in-person workshops. And to prep for the project, just think about, if you do want to teach, what kind of resources or classes would you want to prepare, if any? What kind of subjects would you want to teach? Start thinking about those things so that for our final project, you can make your own plan. And as one little bonus, I just want you to remember, the more you teach, the more you learn about teaching. There's really no other way to feel more confident about teaching people other than to teach them. And it sounds like so dumb that you have to teach in order to learn how to be a good teacher. But it's true. You do, because teaching is such a different animal from learning how to do something yourself. And so my best advice to myself and to everybody, if you want to get good at teaching, is to teach someone, to try to teach someone what you think a good, like what subject you're passionate about. And the more you do that, and the more you just go for it, instead of waiting for yourself to be ready, the more you go for it, the better you're going to be. So that is my little spiel about teaching. And with that, let's move on to the final category, selling.
Hi, thank you so much for joining me in this video of my Ways to Make Money as a Freelance Artist series. I had such a fun time making this for you, and I can't wait to make you even more content. So if you like what you see, or if you liked any of my, I have some watercolor tutorials as well, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because that's the best way to support YouTubers that you want to continue making content for you. And if you want to view any of the other videos in this Ways to Make Money series, make sure to check the description below this video. It has a full course schedule that details when the rest of the classes will be released, and if they've already been released, then it will have links to those classes as well. So thank you again for joining me, and can't wait to see you next time.